Persis Forster. First of all, you got to run your hands through your hair. Ladies and gentlemen, if you drop the cane again, you're not going to be in the recital. No, I should have said that, but I didn't hear her say that. The way I first came to know her, I saw her in all of these big summer musicals at Casamiana, starring opposite Van Johnson and Marianne Mobley and Gary Collins. Of course, she was this very powerful, commanding woman on stage. And then I found out that she's local. And I'm like, Persis Forster actually lives here. Then I find out that she is Arlington.
She was the studio. And so everyone looked up to her. Everyone knew who Miss Persis Forster was and admired her. And she taught me everything I know.
Yes, you learn all the language. Yes, you learn all the dance steps. You learn hop to the step, flat ball change, hop to the step, flat ball change. But what I loved about Miss Persis was she could give you all those words, but she also had the shorthand of saying, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da. And that's what worked for me. That I could pick up with that rhythm and I could hear it. If I could hear it, I could do it.
She taught not only dancing, but she taught standards and expectations. She pushed me to audition for Six Flags, and I was the first tap dancer in the Crazy Horse Saloon. And of course, she pushed me into Miss Arlington pageant too, and went with me to the auditions, and always was there for me. And I always shaped up, stepped up to the plate there.
My first impression, or the first time that I knew of her, was I went and saw a show at UTA that she had directed. She narrated the show and kind of talked about, I saw this show on Broadway. And I was like, who is this lady? And why do we care what show she saw on Broadway? And I did not realize at the time that she was an Arlington legend, that she was an icon, because I was a dumb high school kid. And then when I went to college, I had her in class, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's brilliant. She does know everything about theater and about musicals. Oh my gosh, she was a force of nature. She was so powerful. When she came in the room, you just noticed her, right? Funny, charming. Some people would say scary.
I love that we were all, and I know everybody was, we were all just a little bit scared of Persis. Just a little bit, right? Just a little bit scared of her, which made it great because you really wanted to please her. You always wanted to do your best job for Persis. But I love that about her. That was the presence that she had.
We were at TATD for the weekend, all day, activities all day. Early in the morning, we were all exhausted. I mean, we're sitting down and eating breakfast, and all of us are just kind of hunched over eating. We're so exhausted. I hear Miss Persis saying, girls, girls, and she's like clapping, and it's the parting of the Red Sea through the airport, and you can just see her coming through like all of these people. And she says, always bring your fork or your spoon to your mouth and not your mouth to the food. And I think about that all the time whenever I'm eating.
She was determined, and she wanted the best for me. And so that's what I gave her. That's what I tried to give her always. And I think everyone did. All of her students always were cognitive of that they needed to do their best for Miss Persis.
Miss Persis, elf shows were a phenomenal idea. They are a phenomenal idea in that they really train performers. You arrive and you have to make sure you're prepared. You've got lipstick and cold cream and everything you need, and then you show up and you don't know what role you're going to be playing. You might normally be a Santa Claus in a tree, but there might be times when you have to take on another role, and the stage isn't always a square stage.
You may learn a big dance step over here, but you're going to do it over there. Or we've put together a show and now we've got to go do it over here and there's absolutely no space. And you just make it work.
I think you can transfer that to life. That life isn't always a square stage. It has round edges. It can have little curves along the way. And so that flexibility and ingenuity and creativity that you learn in elf shows then transfers on later in life.
If something doesn't work, you have to put that fire out. You have to go, okay, that's not going to work. We're going to do this instead. That's part of the great thing about theater is constantly having to problem solve and fix little things, and she was a master at it.
Miss Persis is the number one person who has influenced me, period, in life. And I think of my childhood, and as I tear up, my childhood is synonymous with Miss Persis in Miss Persis Studio. Like, there is nobody who had a bigger impact. And I think about how lucky I am to have somebody who invested so much of themselves in me. And that's not just true for me, that's true for every student.
As a person, she was one of the first people to tell me that I was okay just as who I was, and that I was, talented and skilled and a good guy. I wouldn't be at Theater Arlington without her. I wouldn't have had my teaching career without her. I'm so grateful to have known her and for the impact that she made in my life.
I think she felt like there was a little bit of showman in everyone, and each person was different from the next. But they had to stand up straight, they had to smile, they had to be confident in themselves.
When you were 3 or 5 years old, when you were just learning to say your name and smile and look at the audience, she could see that 10 years later, you would be this very confident, smiling young person, and she gave it her all. Like, you got the best of her, and everybody did all the time.
That have come through her circles and have been affected by her, that have learned from her, and then go out. That spreads out into the world.
When I think of the quote, St. Catherine of Siena said, "When you are fully yourself, you set the world ablaze." And I think that's what Miss Persis did. I think of my Aunt Vanessa, who has taught for 30, 40 years, Roger Spivey and Bobby Heath, Angela Holt, Ashley Arnold, who's had a long career with Disney. There's also students who have come back. Miss Betty Jo taught me, and she was one of Miss Persis's first students. Melissa Martin and Becca Brown and Kelly Jokel.
It's everywhere from the Broadway performer to those that become teachers to that little kid that's still dancing in their living room.
And I was lucky enough to be in her sphere. Changed my life, made my life. And I still tap dancing.
It's just a continual family, and I think once you're part of the Miss Persis family, you're part of a huge web of people, and everybody who has had the same experience and can tell the same stories. They can tell you that Miss Persis will say, it's because, not because, and they all have those lessons and shared experiences.
And I want to thank all of you probably have saved my life at one time or another.
Thank you for being a great role, because that's what you were. And I mean that in the best sense of everything. Showbiz, life, what a ride. What a great ride. And the last thing I want to say is,